Final hour OverDrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hayes, Jonas Siegel of The Athletic. Rick Bowness coming up here momentarily. Mark Schlereth later in the hour on a lot of NFL news today. Leafs in Utah tonight. We'll get to our best bet. Al's brother will, I believe, have his clue later this hour. We look forward to where he is. Right? We got Leafs Utah tonight, and then Leafs Panthers on Thursday here in Toronto, and Aaron Ekblad will not be there. So breaking news. This hour, Aaron Ekblad has been suspended for 20 games for taking a substance that violates the NHL and the PA performance-enhancing substance program. He has issued a statement, and he is owning it. Give him credit for that. Aaron Ekblad just issued this statement. As the NHL announced, I have been suspended for violating the NHL and NHLPA performance-enhancing substances program. The news that I had failed the random drug test was a shock. Ultimately, I made a mistake by taking something to help me recover from recent injuries without first checking with proper medical and team personnel. I have let my teammates, the Panthers organization, and our great fans down. For that, I am truly sorry. I have accepted responsibility for my mistake and will be fully prepared to return to my team when my suspension is over. I have learned a hard lesson and cannot wait to be back with my teammates, end quote. So not fighting it, not saying this didn't happen, claiming, ignorance to, I didn't know and I took something, blah, blah, blah. Who knows the true story, but I'll give him credit. Like, he got hit, he got caught 20 games, and he's not challenging it. He's not saying this is ridiculous, this is a witch hunt. He's like, I got to own this one. I'll let everyone down, and I'll see you in 20 games.
Well, and the timing is brutal, not just for like the team and everything like that. Like, he's a free agent at
the end of the year, and they just got Seth Jones.
Yeah, it's like suddenly it's like, where does he fit? They could still sign him, I guess.
Yeah,
but,
big opportunity for Seth.
Well, not going to be easy. Like, you're just going to come back for Game 3 of the playoffs, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he'll step right in. He's a really good player, but big opportunity again for the Leafs and for Tampa, for that matter. Like, Tampa's right there.
Tampa's a point behind the Leafs.
Yeah, it's a race for 1, 2, 3 in the division. It's right there, and it feels like a borderline must-win for the Leafs tonight. You've lost 3 in a row. You got to get Utah, and then you got to beat Florida. Like, you've got them 3 more times. You have to go at a minimum 2-1.
Yeah, and if you go 3-0, like, you probably win the division.
It's right there in front of you. Like, it's right there in front of you to win the division. They play Tampa, I think, one more time.
Once.
And once you get through this road trip, they do go through California, which is not a crazy tough sketch. You should be able to beat San Jose. It's a short trip. You're out there. It's a business trip. Anaheim's been better recently, and they've been better at home. But you should be able to beat them. You got to beat San Jose. Yeah. And then LA's a challenge, but they're a bit inconsistent right now, too. Like, there's no reason you can't go through California and get 4 or 5 points. It's still right there for the Leafs.
How would you rank those 3 teams coming out of the deadline? Tampa, Toronto, Florida.
On paper, in terms of projecting Cup success?
Just
like, who do I think's got the best chance of winning?
Sure. Who do you think is the best of those 3 teams in order? Because you could really go any order.
I'd go Florida 1. They deserve the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
I think
back-to-back Cup finals.
Yeah. And, again, Ekblad out is a hit, but
they just got Seth Jones.
Yeah. And you presume he'll be back for Game 3. And let's say we didn't know about this. It was just on paper based on, you asked me Friday night after the trade deadline. I think them picking up Marchand is a really crafty, savvy move, man. I just think he fits in so well there. And I fully expect Kachuk to return for Game 1, too. Mm-hmm. But these are outliers. Like, maybe Kachuk's not ready, and Ekblad Game 3, like you said, he's jumping on a moving train. They played a lot of hockey the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a layup for them to have playoff success. But I think they deserve to be number 1. Tampa and Toronto I see as kind of a tie right now. I know that's a kind of a cop-out, but I don't see much of a separation. Yeah. The question is in net for me. Vasilevsky, your boy, has been outstanding recently.
Anytime you bring him up, you guys slander my name.
You were very harsh.
You know what? Do you remember the context of what happened? Is he didn't play the game before against the Leafs. And one of you guys... I think I'm going to slander you.
Yeah.
I think one of you guys said, he doesn't want to play Leafs. And then I brought up the fact that his numbers against the Leafs suddenly aren't as good, like in regular seasons. Like, they played them earlier in the year and he didn't have a great start.
Yes.
And then I think Tampa came into Toronto and Johansson played. It was like, that's
right.
Kind of weird because they had another game the next night. It's like, well, why isn't he playing this second night? And then that's how we got in the conversation.
That's
we
right.
talked about the playoffs. And he hadn't been as good last year. I think he had a 901 save percentage.
And the Leafs have gotten to
average.
him the last couple of years.
That was the context.
Yeah. Like the Leafs have played Tampa well the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Like the Leafs, I think, feel pretty comfortable playing them. So all reasonable, but Vasilevsky's been very good recently, like outstanding
Like
recently.
the second or third best goalie.
And the Leaf goalies have hit a bit of a wall here.
Yeah.
Right? Like Joseph Woolgood tonight, he needs to bounce back. He's got to have a start tonight.
Yeah.
You have to have a start. And, Stolarz looked a little uncomfortable against the Sharks. Going in relief against Vegas, so right. You can't even evaluate that. I didn't love his game on Saturday. I thought he was underwater a lot because the team kind of hung him out to dry at times, but he gave up a couple goals that you can't give up. So they've hit a bit of a wall. And the fact is Vasilevsky is an all-time great goaltender.
Yeah.
And the Leafs goalies, are not at the same level. So that is the breaking point. Which Vasilevsky are you going to get, and which Anthony Stolarz or Joseph Woll are you going to get?
Well, and I liked what they did at the deadline in Tampa. Like they had Gord as their old third-line center, and then they get Bjorkstrand, who can kind of fit anywhere.
Yeah.
That was kind of their need.
I think all three teams did very well.
Sure.
Like I think Florida, Toronto, and Tampa are all better today than they were before the trade deadline.
Yeah.
You don't agree with that?
No. Yeah.
Which team do you not agree with? The Leafs?
No, I agree with all of them. I don't
You
think the Leafs is as
markedly improved.
I think they improved. I don't think it's as big a swing as the consensus.
Is that based on Lawton in particular?
That's based on Lawton.
Yeah. I mean, he's a true third-line center. Like, you got to be realistic with what you think you're getting
He
at.
might be a third-line winger. But anyway, we can talk about it.
He's always played center. But
except this year for 4 months.
So you see him as a winger.
For 4 months, the first 4 months of the season, he played on the wing. Mm-hmm. And he played, like, everywhere in their lineup. He was on their fourth line at times. So, like, I don't think he's as perfect a third-line center as the consensus.
Yep, that's reasonable.
Nor does he score that much. But anyway, we can talk to Rick about these things.
Let's bring him in here, man. The guy coached for a long, long time in the NHL. Now you see him all over the place, and he's been on our show a bunch. It's always great to have him on. Here he is, longtime NHL head coach. Here's Rick Bowness. How you doing, Rick?
Gentlemen, doing great, thanks. How are you guys?
We're doing very well. I mean, we're somewhat relieved, I guess, that the trade deadline's over. I'm curious how you felt about it throughout your career. Like, could you sense a difference in terms of the mood in the room once the trade deadline finally passed?
Oh, absolutely. As a coach, you always try to control the noise around your team as best you can. You get to that week, 2 weeks before the deadline, and it's everywhere, and that's all the media and everyone wants to talk about. So you try to avoid talking about it as much as you can, but the reality of it is, and in the locker room, the players are talking about it every chance they get, and they're watching the news and they're reading social media, and they know what's going on. So, as a coach, you're happy it's behind you. You're also very, very happy when everyone, teammates included, believe you became a better team out of it. But there's no question it's a bit of a distraction, and the challenge again is for every coach in that league to keep as much noise about it out of the locker room as you can, especially during the day of a game. You don't want them talking about potential trades or who's coming, who's going. But the other thing you had to do is when you have a player that's being mentioned every day about possibly being traded, you had to have constant communication with him. And let him know where he stood and what was going on. You just couldn't ignore it. Some of those are tough conversations, but nor can you be afraid to have those. But if a player you had was being mentioned every day in every trade going around the league, you certainly had to address that with him.
I'm always curious, what is more challenging for a head coach after you acquire a couple of different players? Is it making sure those new players are comfortable, or making sure the carryover players that are getting pushed aside to an extent to make room for those new players are comfortable? If you understand what I'm saying. Like, the new guys are coming in, you got to make sure they know the system and they know what's going on. But if they're coming in and they're plugging in, someone's moving down the depth chart, and maybe they're not overly ecstatic about that. Which challenge is more of a priority for a coach post-acquisition?
They're both very, very challenging. There's no question. Now, a lot of that has to do with the person or the player that you're bringing in. And I'll use Seth Jones as an example. Seth Jones walks into that Florida Panthers room. Every player on that team is excited to see him. And, yeah, one of their teammates that they battled through all year is going to lose some minutes, is going to lose some ice time. But every one of them knows this guy has an immediate presence in that locker room. He's going to help you win. He's going to help you have challenge for the Stanley Cup. If you look at Dylan Cousins going into Ottawa, okay, now he's coming from a team that hasn't made the playoffs in, 13 years? And the team has underachieved the last little bit. He's coming in for a very, very popular teammate. Okay, so they love Josh Norris, as you can see the reactions from Brady and Allmark. So he's walking into a totally different room. So those players are sitting there a little apprehensive, saying, "Okay, we traded for you. We hope you can come in and find your game again," because everyone's talked about he's having a tough year. Players are well aware of that. We hope you can find your game and help us. And it's up to the coach to mediate that. You got to help that new player with the video and supporting him in every chance you get. You've got to go to your captain, your leadership group, and pretty well everyone on the team. Okay, we just lost an important part of our team. But, management feels this guy's going to make it down the road, is going to make us a better team. Something had to be done to tweak the room, so we've done that. Now we all have to support it. Don't have to like it. And as we all know, hockey is the greatest game in the world, but we also know it's tough business, coaches and players. So you just look at those two scenarios. Jones is one thing, Cousins is another, and it's up to the coach to handle both of those. But you'd much prefer handling the Jones scenario than the Cousins scenario.
Well, Rick, how does the off-ice component affect you as a coach? Because obviously the player is probably like their head is spinning. Like, have you found that that's something that really affects some of the players that come into a new team after a trade where they're kind of just like the on-ice stuff is actually easier for them than the off-ice stuff?
Yeah, I agree with that. Your job as a coach, again, is to make sure that player feels wanted and feels that you're welcoming him with an open arms, and we got you. We think you make us a better team, and then you start working with him every day. You're talking to him, see how he's doing off the ice, see how he's doing on the ice. Now the communication between not only the head coach but certainly the assistant coaches as well is to make him feel welcome and make him feel part of the team. Because a guy like Dylan Cousins going into, he knows he got traded for a very popular player. Okay, so he just got to come in, be quiet for a little bit, let his play do all the talking for him, listen to everybody, and just be ready to go and work your butt off every single day. He read all year. I've been reading about this kid all winter that he's going to get traded. He's having a tough year. That's tough on the kid's head. Now he's got to come in, and you've got to get rid of that baggage as quick as you can with that player. And you've got to welcome with open arms. You've got to get your teammates on board. And as a coach, you've got to watch those interactions, okay, on the bench, on the ice, in the locker room. Like, you've got to have your finger on that pulse as well. You can't just trust the players to do it on their own. That they need some help from the players. If there's something you see you don't like right away when you bring a new player in, you've got to grab the guys and address it right away, because the deal's been made. It's not going backwards. So everyone's got to work together to make that guy feel very welcome and feel a big part of the team.
Chatting with Rick Bowness. So the Atlantic Division, Florida, Toronto, Tampa, they all were active leading up to the trade deadline, all brought in multiple players, and it's a race for that number one seed. It currently stands, Florida's got 83 points, the Leafs have 79, Tampa's got 78, and you got anywhere between 18 and 19 games still left to be played, and a bunch of games against each other, so this is really up in the air. When you look at those three teams, Rick, Florida, Toronto, Tampa, is there one team that you have above the rest? Like, do you have one team that you look at and say, that's my favorite to win the division, and that's my favorite to probably come out of the division come playoff time?
No, not really. You give a little heads up to Florida because they've won the Cup. But that's back-to-back trips to the finals as well. I think that those three teams you talked about, they went out and addressed their needs. Toronto, as we know, when Tree and Chief took over last year, we have to be harder to play against. They've got enough skill up front. They do. They're going to when they're healthy and they get everything clicking, they're going to score goals. They had to be a much harder team to play against, as they saw in the playoffs. So they're bringing in guys that are more physical, and it started last summer. But Carter and Lawton, they're hard to play against. They're big bodies, and they're in your face, and that's what the Tree and Chief are looking for. So they've improved that aspect of the game. To Florida, they lost a couple of key defensemen last year, and Ekblad, Larson, and Montour. You go get Seth Jones, right? So they made a great move. Because again, those players know this guy's a great player, and he's going to help us win the Stanley Cup. So, again, look at Tampa. They went out and you're going to go into Tampa. They have that winning culture. You go get Yanni Gort. He was part of that winning culture. He's not intimidated by that. And he'll help Bjornquist get acclimated in that locker room. So, but again, those players are saying, okay, these two guys are helping us. So I don't know who the favorite is.
Yeah.
All I know, all three teams, none of them want to finish second or third. They all want to finish first.
Yeah.
Because that second and third battle, man, and it's the same as the Central Division. You're going to lose a really, really good team in that first round. So all three teams did what they had to do to avoid being put in that position. And all three teams are gunning for that first place, and it's going to be a great race to watch between now and the end of the year.
Absolutely, it will be. Great catching up with you, Rick. We appreciate you doing this.
All right, always a pleasure, guys. Take care. Have a good night.
You too. There's Rick Bowness. Three good teams chasing that top seed. If not, you want to home ice, I would think. You want the second seed at a minimum.
Yeah.
But that's what's unsettling at this point. It could be any of those things.
I have a good question for you. Let's go through rosters.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the best forwards of those groups? I guess you could say any of them.
If you, again, are we presuming health? Like everyone's healthy.
Everyone's healthy.
It's weird with Florida right now with Marchand out and Tkachuk out.
Let's
but
say healthy.
If everybody's healthy.
Yeah, let's say it's a draw because that's close.
Yeah, it's very close.
Who is the best defense in that group?
I think the best top four, I would probably go Tampa, but it's close.
Close.
It's close.
Then who is the best goaltending?
I think you have to go
Tampa or Florida.
Tampa, Florida leaves third.
Okay.
Like
That's
the Leafs,
really close.
Yeah.
Because the Leafs' top four is actually got
the Leafs defense.
a nice play.
Yeah, like they got to play better than they have recently. They've really struggled. Tanev's still hurt. Like Tanev's not playing tonight.
That was just, it's just going to be a week.
Totally fine. Back skating. Like the Leafs, how many times this year have they just completely misled people with injury reports?
I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you don't like he's skating and he seems to be revving it up. Like,
yeah, but like if it's a shoulder injury, like cool, he's skating. Like,
yeah, exactly. Is he even close to playing? You got Florida on Thursday night. Like that's a game they have to. They have that game circled clearly.
Yeah,
and then Ottawa.
That's a
on
tough
Saturdays,
first game to come back.
It's very tough, and Ottawa plays them very difficult.
Yes,
and Ottawa's that was a big comeback win over the weekend.
Sure, and now just made trades. And
yeah. And Cousins performed pretty well. Like that, it's not going to be an easy 2 games in 3 nights.
You know, who's the best goal differential of the 3?
Is it Tampa?
Tampa by fair bit.
We got some breaking news in baseball. Gerrit Cole, Tommy John, done for the year. The Yankees are in one, man. Like now, you got Soto, your boy who left.
Yeah, greatest hitter ever.
Greatest hitter of all time, and their ace is done for the year. All of a sudden, the AL East.
But they did make some moves. Like
they
got
brought
Bellinger. They did things.
And they're the Yankees. They
Max Fried.
Find a way to patch things together better than anybody.
Yeah.
But this makes you wonder, will Cole be back next year? Like, will be available next year? He just signed the deal, right? Like, there was a lot of debate. What's he going to do? Where's he going to go? And you could tell, like, Cashman was speaking over the weekend that he was preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. That was him saying, we know what's coming. Like, they know when you're having forearm issues or elbow injury issues, they know it's trouble.
Anytime you see, like, pitcher X went and met with someone about his elbow, Tommy John. Every time. So
yeah. And as JP said, Giancarlo Stanton too. He's got both elbows are an issue.
Yeah, I think he's going to miss the year. Isn't he?
Well, if he has surgery on both, he's done. So Stanton, who was red hot down the stretch last year and into the playoffs, a big playoff performer.
Great, yeah.
Stanton done. Gerrit Cole done. Soto gone. That's big, man. The Yankees are in trouble. So if you're the Blue Jays, now you can counter, not to the same extent, but Eric Swanson, here we go again, going to start the year on the IL. He's having issues. That happened last year, and his season was a complete write-off. Like, that trade does not get brought up enough, how awful that trade was.
Which trade was that?
Teoscar Hernandez straight up for Eric Swanson.
Yeah,
horrendous trade. Horrendous. And, Swanson, they were banking on a big bounce back, and that bullpen was a mess last year. You got Hoffman, who had his physical issues over the offseason. What's he going to be like? Sounds like Varsho's starting to throw. I don't know if he'll be prepared to play come opening day. That's the issue. He can hit. He's hitting throughout the spring, but he's not comfortable throwing. But they got to figure out what they're going to do. But, if the Yankees are going to take a step back, that's big. If you're Baltimore, if you're Boston,
Toronto, step forward, right?
They could. And they got a great farm system in Boston. That's another thing that's coming. Like they have 3 or 4 kids that are going to be arriving.
The number 1 prospect.
I believe they've got the number 1 farm system. And the Jays over the course of the weekend I saw were ranked like 27th or something by is that Baseball America or Baseball Prospectus or whichever one it was. Like their farm system is just a mess. All right, we've been talking about this Mitch Marner situation all day. Something to chew on brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Enjoy $15 lunch at BP where you get an entree, a side, and a drink, and you'll get it all in 20 minutes or less. A fast lunch doesn't have to be fast food. See you for a $15 fast lunch at your local Boston Pizza. Asking people, simple question, do you want Marner to stay with the Leafs, like beyond this year? 49.4%.
Wow.
Yes. 49.4%. Yes.
That close?
30.4% no. I don't know why Doogie put this.
There's a third option.
For some reason, there's a third option. Unsure is 20%. What the hell does that mean? That's like, who are you going to choose? Are you choosing Polivier or Carney? Unsure. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure this out. I don't know why we put unsure in there, but Doogie went with the unsure.
Maybe that's what Doogie did when he voted.
Doogie seems
Didn't
very
cross
indecisive.
anybody out.
Yeah, he just goes in there and rips up his ballot.
Has he
Very
voted?
indecisive.
Do you think he's voted?
Doogie, no chance.
No chance.
No chance. So I guess I would take that as a 50-50. Not an exact science.
That's
It's online. But I think that speaks to it. Like Marner being a polarizing figure. And a lot of it is the contract and the playoffs. Like that's at the core of it for every Leaf fan. Like there's so many layers to this story. We've talked about it endlessly and we will continue to. At the core of it for every single Leaf fan, the eternal optimist, the eternal pessimist, and everyone in between. Just win in the playoffs. and everything is different. Like if they had a modicum of success in their history, it would be a completely different tone.
Yeah.
And it's a borderline miracle. And this is unique to Mitch right now because he's the one that's up. Willie's signed, so he's not going anywhere. Matthews is signed, he's not going anywhere. If Marner just accepted a deal a week ago, this would be over. People can yell and scream, but it's not going to make a difference. He's not going anywhere. The fact that it is still possible they could move off him or he could want to move or they could make a change to the core 4 philosophy is what makes this whole playoff run so fascinating and why it continues to come up, because if they just had playoff success, everyone would have a different viewpoint.
Yeah. And actually, as people who cover the team pretty closely, that's one of the things that I don't think has sunk in for them, just in my dealings with them. That's where a lot of the criticism comes from.
Like the players don't see it.
It hasn't, like, I remember being kind of astonished after the playoffs last year, where it was like, kind of the reaction you got after the playoffs was like, well, it was game 7. It can go in either way. Like, what do you want? And it's like, guys, like, this has happened a lot. Like, you kind of got to be like, you kind of want to hear like the Nathan McKinnon thing. Like, I'm tired of this.
I'm so sick of this.
And you haven't heard that. And it's almost like the criticism is unfair. And it's maybe some of it's unfair, but ultimately 9 years,
it's
one
not
playoff
asking that
not
much.
Unfair.
Yeah, it's not like, again, any other 3-pack I can think of in the league. Like Nathan McKinnon said it after the game on Saturday night. He did an interview with Hockey Net. I thought it was a great interview where they asked him about the picture taken after they won the Stanley Cup of, I think there were 5 players who were on that team that finished with 43 points or whatever it was. And it was McKinnon and Landeskog and Rantanen. I don't even know if Makar was there yet.
Was Nikushkin one?
It might
there yet?
I don't know. He might have been in Dallas. He started his career in Dallas. I'm not sure he was. I can't remember who the other players were. But McKinnon said, like, it was a miracle that I think 3 years after that they won the Stanley Cup, and he's like, it was a miracle that they kept us. And then the panel kind of laughed. He's like, I'm being dead serious. Like, we were horrendous and going nowhere, and they actually kept us all and gave us a shot. And we knew if we didn't in the next 3 or 4 years win a cup, not a round, a cup, that they're going to say, enough, we can't keep doing this. And that is at the core of all of this with the Leafs, is that their philosophy is we're just keeping the same guys. And then it gets spun into, oh, you're attacking these players. Why don't you love the players?
Yes.
It's not about the individual player. It's about the team.
Great players.
Exactly.
All-time players in Toronto history.
They have all been together. Yeah. The 3 of them in particular. I put Tavares in a bit of a different category because he was older when he showed up, and he wasn't here at the start. Although still, he's got to be a part of it the last 6 years. Yeah. And Riley, who's been here the longest, plays a different position. But really, it started with the Nylander draft, Marner draft, Matthews draft. They all show up at the same time. Rest is history. I can't think of another 3-pack of superstars that would be given
in any sport.
8 years and now into their 9th, where if you have playoff success or not, it doesn't really matter. You're wanted to stay around. And 2 of them are guaranteed to. Matthews and Willie are not going anywhere. That conversation will not come up. Like, again, they could get swept in the move Marner aside. They could lose in the first round, get swept. Matthews is horrendous. No one is going to suggest they should move off him. Nobody.
Well, and I think that connects.
Same thing with Willie. Like, it'll just be, hey, you guys stay.
I'm sure that connects to all this, that Matthews doesn't get criticized the same way as Marner does.
And
their production in the playoffs, it's not like it's that different.
I can't argue against that. I do think.
So what is the reason for that? And I think it goes back to the contract, honestly.
I think the contract, I think the local guy, I think the way he plays a little bit.
Sure.
And now, unfortunately for him, although I'm not pitying any of these guys, they're making $11 million a year and they get to play for the Leafs. Like, the idea that anyone could spin this as a woe is me, to me, is infuriating and insulting to people. Like, oh, how could you possibly do this to them? They've been treated like gods by this organization since they arrived. They go to the playoffs every single year. They make a fortune. They've all made more money than they probably should have based on the way when they originally signed. Now, they played up to their value and they earned their money and all that kind of stuff the rest of the way. But they got sweetheart, player-friendly deals when they were all restricted free agents. Unprecedented in the league. And what's different here with Marner that opens the door for people to poke at the idea of him leaving is that he's the one that hasn't signed yet.
Well, and he was asked
Boston
about
signed,
it.
Willie signed.
He was asked about it after the game on Saturday, and he didn't exactly kind of reassure it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And it will be interesting. We will talk about this
that is the truth.
Year. Like, that's the thing.
If Mitch was like so uncomfortable, then he could just say, forget it, guys. I'm changing my stance. Let's negotiate. Let's work out a deal tonight. And they probably could.
Sure.
Not doing that. That would be something. Breaking news tonight.
Actually,
all this, I want it behind me. Moving on. Mark Schlereth will join us of the NFL on Fox. Aaron Rodgers to Pittsburgh. What would that look like? What does he make of the quarterback carousel? What are the Rams doing? They want to move off Cooper Kupp, but they're bringing in Devontae Adams. There's a lot of news out there in the NFL as free agency has arrived. We'll get to our best bets still to come as well. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, best bets later in the hour. Al's Brothers clue of the day. We'll get that one right. We'll get to that a little bit later on. NFL free agency is open, and it's got a quarterback carousel going on, and Josh Allen made a lot of money. Deserved, but I'm guessing that'll open up more flexibility for the Bills this offseason in terms of moving the money around on the cap. But where's Aaron Rodgers going to play? Is he going to go to Pittsburgh now? That appears to be something that the Steelers are looking at, and maybe Rodgers would be intrigued by. To chat about it, we're joined now by former NFL player, Super Bowl winner, NFL on Fox analyst, and host of the Stinkin Truth podcast, Mark Schlereth. Mark, we've been talking about this afternoon. I'm curious your thoughts on that. If Rodgers went to Pittsburgh and played with the Steelers, do you think it would be successful?
Yeah, what's interesting is you look at the last 9 games of the season, Aaron played exceptionally well. And, yeah, I did a game late in the season, a Jets game late in the season, and sat down one-on-one for about 45 minutes with Aaron. And, not making excuses, but he had an ankle and a calf and a hamstring early in the season, and that really limited his ability to move around in the pocket. And obviously the Jets couldn't run. They were a bit of a mess offensively. And, then they fired their head coach. So there were a lot of extenuating circumstances within Aaron Rodgers, kind of what went on early in the season. But like I said, 9 games of the season, the guy was exceptional. I think he had 14, 15 touchdowns, like 2 interceptions or 3. Like, he had really good stats. And I called him in this game. I called this game, man. I watched him warm up with a bunch of 25-year-olds, and he threw the ball way better than anybody else on that football field. So the guy can still play. So do I think he would go to Pittsburgh? He told me point blank, for me to play again this year, it's going to have to be a perfect situation. I mean, he has a lot of reverence for Mike Tomlin. He has a reverence for the Pittsburgh Steelers as an organization. I would say that Minnesota would be the best landing spot based on the weapons they have and based on the offense that they play, because Aaron played for Matt LaFleur, which comes off that, that Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell system. So he's familiar with that offense, but I would think that Pittsburgh would intrigue him with the weapons. They just signed DK Metcalf. So I would think that would be a good landing spot for Aaron.
If he ended up going to Minnie, who do you think would want to see him less in the division, the Packers or the Bears?
Well, I mean, obviously you look at Minnesota, I don't think either of those teams would be really excited about playing them. When they have, Justin Jefferson and Addison and TJ Hawkinson, they just re-signed Aaron Jones. So that offense is pretty complete. And, oh, by the way, I think that Aaron's an upgrade over Sam Darnold. I know he is from an understanding standpoint and operating that offense. Sam Darnold was in it in San Francisco, as a backup and played last year, went 14-3 during the regular season. So, but I still think Aaron would be a upgrade over that. So it would be interesting. Certainly, certainly nobody would be excited about playing the Minnesota Vikings for sure.
Yeah. Well, he's on the Bears though, right? And the Packers, his history, the idea of them having to face him twice, it'd be compelling.
But
go ahead, Jonas.
I was going to ask you, Mark, I'm curious what you think the dynamic would be between him and J.J. McCarthy. Is that the right quarterback to pair with McCarthy? How do you think that would work?
Yeah, I think that, you look at J.J. McCarthy, and we don't know what he is. He was a guy in the college game that didn't have a lot of snaps, coming out of Michigan. And then he, tears up his knee, and there was a report that he had another procedure in November on top of the one he had early, in training camp. So, ultimately, Aaron Rodgers, when I sit down and talk with quarterbacks, when I'm calling games for Fox, Aaron Rodgers is probably, he and Tom Brady, the 2 smartest guys I've ever sat down and discussed football with. And Aaron, I had a conversation with Aaron. I was talking about the Jets and the pathetic running game that they had. And Aaron spent probably 25 minutes talking to me about the run game and the lack of understanding of what they're doing based on a coaching staff understanding with the Jets. And it was a fascinating conversation. And then on Sunday, I saw him on the field. He goes, that's the best run game conversation I've had in years. He loves that stuff. He loves the intricacy of football. So I would think if you were smart, if you were, if I was J.J. McCarthy, I know I want to play, but also to be able to pick the brain of a guy that has done it at the level that Aaron Rodgers has done it for the number of years he's done it, I would think that would be invaluable to me as I'm trying to groom myself into being a legit NFL quarterback.
We have Mark Schlereth, Super Bowl winner, NFL on Fox analyst, host of the Stinkin Truth podcast. A couple of weeks ago, it sounded like Myles Garrett was done with Cleveland. Wanted out, wanted to go somewhere where he could win. And then Cleveland, I guess, offered him more money than anyone's ever received in the history of the NFL playing his position. He said, all right, I can do that. What do you make of this, I guess his change of mind? Do you think this was a negotiation tactic the whole time? Why is Garrett deciding to stay in Cleveland?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, it was Friday,
Right, exactly.
Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, Friday, the report was that he requested a sit-down with the owner, Jimmy Haslam, and Jimmy Haslam said no. And then this weekend, apparently Jimmy Haslam said no because he was at the bank clearing funds. I was foolish enough to believe that he didn't want to play in Cleveland anymore, that he wanted a chance to win a championship. But, I guess you have to weigh out championship or $123 million guaranteed money. I'll take the money, please, and hope that maybe they find a quarterback somewhere before I retire. So we will see. It does look like, he said he didn't want to go from Cleveland to Canton, but that's exactly what it looks like will happen. They were a playoff team a couple years ago with Baker Mayfield. So we'll see. And even last year, or the year before last, with Joe Flacco. So, maybe they're not as far off. Obviously, the quarterback situation has been an abject disaster since they signed Deshaun Watson. So they've got to clean that up. But he certainly is an absolute freak show. I mean, I was at an event 2 years ago now, the O-line, the Masterminds O-line clinic, and he's working out in Dallas where we host that O-line deal. And I'm going to tell you right now, dude was, walking around without a shirt on. And if I was put together like that, I would never wear a shirt, ever. I mean, that dude is 295 at 6 foot, whatever, 6. And chiseled from a lot of ounce of body fat on the dude. He's got like a 6-pack abs, and he is just an absolute freak of nature.
Mark, I'm curious which fit you like better, Darnold in Seattle or Geno in Vegas?
It's interesting. Geno can flat spin it, and Geno is a guy that I really have a lot of respect for, how he turned his career around and his ability to play. And so I love him reuniting with Pete Carroll because Pete Carroll just has so much belief in him. And I like, some defensive pieces of the Raiders. Obviously, Max Crosby is as good as it gets. But I still think there are ways away in that division. I think Seattle, a lot of people are concerned on DK Metcalf, and we're moving on, from Lockett and all those things. I think you look at them. Mike McDonald wants to play stellar defense, wants to run the ball, wants to take some pressure off the quarterback position. I think they're going to be better than people think. I probably like Sam Darnold to the Seattle Seahawks better than I like Geno to the Raiders, but I don't hate either of the moves.
Can you tell me what the Rams are doing here, where they're going to cut Cooper Kupp? That's coming out. If they can't make a trade work, they're going to cut him. But then they bring in Devontae Adams. I believe they're the same age. I know Kupp's been more injured recently, although Adams hasn't been exactly perfectly healthy either. But what is the reasoning for Kupp going and Adams coming in L.A.?
Well, I think you look at Kupp. He has been injured, and what they ask him to do. There's a ton of blocking involved in what they do, and their 3 wide receiver sets. He really plays tight end in those positions, motion, really heavily involved in the run game. But so is Puka Nacua. And so I think they looked at those 2 receivers and said they're essentially the same guy, but Puka, is in year 2, and we're going to get more wear and tear out of him running that. Devontae Smith is a guy that can play X, he can play F, he can play Z. He plays every position across the board, can run the entirety of the route tree. The dude is big time. He's a big-time player. He has not been asked to do the things that Cooper Kupp has done in this league. So I think you look at it and say, hey, he might be a year older than Cooper or 2 years older than Cooper, but from a production standpoint, he's incredibly productive. He's incredibly versatile. We can run him on anything. And he hasn't been asked his whole career to be a battering ram, to be essentially a tight end in their 11 personnel. So I think they really just looked at Cooper Kupp and said, hey, diminishing returns, body is beat up. He's still a really good player, but we've got that guy that can do those things in Puka Nacua, so we're going to move on.
Always great catching up with you, Mark. We appreciate you doing this.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
There's Mark Schlereth of the NFL on Fox. Yeah, still some moving pieces out there in the NFL.
How would you feel as a Packers fan if Aaron Rodgers played for the Vikings?
I think it'd be an incredible story. It would. He's just morphed into Brett Favre.
Yeah,
like that's
right.
the amazing thing is that Favre went to the Jets and then the Vikings after a great career, after kind of getting pushed out, after the Packers had enough of everything he represented, and it would just be full circle. It would be Aaron Rodgers literally morphing into Brett Favre.
But he feels more like a heel than Favre did, no?
I don't know. People were pretty sour on Favre because he was so indecisive. Remember how many times he retired and then he came back?
Was Jets before or after? Am I thinking of this wrong?
Favre went Packers to the Jets to the Vikings.
Okay.
And Rodgers would be doing the same thing.
That's funny.
It is pretty funny. And the Vikings team was really good that Favre went to. They went to an NFC Championship game. And his Vikings team is really good if Rodgers goes there. I don't think the Packers would. I think it'd be incredibly compelling. I'd actually love to see it happen because I think it would be a really cool story. But I don't think Green Bay would love it. I know Bears fans would hate it because he has owned the Bears forever as a Packer. The Bears have been, they're the fourth place team every year, including last year. And they've made some moves. They've made some improvements. They're trying to build up their line. We'll see if, Caleb Williams is the real deal and Ben Johnson's there now. Like, we'll see where the Bears go. But I don't think they'd want anything to do with Aaron Rodgers.
Whose chances would you like better, the Packers or the Vikings in that case? Because I think we'd still have Detroit 1.
Yeah, Detroit would still be number 1.
Toss-up?
Yeah, I think it'd be a toss-up. Green Bay needs some help. Green Bay's got to find a number 1 wide receiver. That became very clear. Jordan Love's, he kind of flatlined last year. You got to take another step. Got to stay healthy. And, what are they going to do? Is Jair Alexander going to stick around? What are they going to do with the pass rush? Are they going to – I think they could use some help on the defensive line. So the Packers have got to get active. They got to do some things too here. But they're always a good team, like Green Bay. Mm-hmm. They're always in the hunt. All right. Al's brother, you ready for this?
Is he there?
I believe he's here. We've sent him out, Al's brother, into the city with another pair of Leaf tickets, and you have to guess where he's hiding for your chance to win them.
Hey, OverDrive fans, it's Monday, which means it's time for a new set of clues to help you get yourself a pair of Leafs tickets. You got to find out where I am this week, and you'll get yourself a pair of Leafs and Avs tickets on March 19th. Here is your Monday clue. This iconic spot is one of Toronto's most popular tourist destinations, and it's probably going to attract quite a lot of people over March break.
All right, there you go. Tune in tomorrow for another clue. The first caller through on Friday with the correct location wins a pair of tickets to see the Leafs play the Avalanche March 19th. Find Al's brother brought to you by McCall Pine Ford in Aurora. Our family, the Ford family, and you. Come back with our best bets and tee up Leafs Hockey Club. One more time. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, best bets powered by FanDuel. Leafs have got to get this tonight. Leafs on the money line, paying minus 118. Leafs on the money line. Mitch Marner to score a goal, plus 240. Scored 2 beauties the other night.
Yeah.
That parlay paying plus 355. Mitch was not affected one way or the other.
I think
by
two
these
guys
reports
that are due are Nylander and Matthews.
Well, Matthews got points in 12 straight games.
Yeah, but he hasn't scored much at all.
Not scoring at all. Like, I don't remember him having great chances the other night.
No.
Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, you would think that Matthews has got to get going here.
I'd like to see them shake it up in the top 6 a little bit. Like, it feels to me a little stale with the
Well, it sounds like Pontus Holmberg is off for Bobby McMahon.
Right. That's
yeah.
Cool.
Well, I think that shocked most people that Pontus Holmberg post-trade deadline is in the top 6.
Yes.
But I agree with you. He's just committed Nyes, Matthews, Marner. That's it. Yeah. Like, that's just the line, and that's the way it goes, and nothing is going to change it.
Yeah, and I'd like to see it just kind of mixed up. It just feels like we're at that point in the year. Change it up, spark something. Like, Nylander's, it's been colder, and I don't know.
Yeah. I would try to put Nylander with Lawton to try to get, like, Lawton feeling comfortable.
Yeah. I don't think Lawton's offensively gifted enough to make that work.
Willie's kind of been carrying people anyway all year.
Like
he's played with Pontus Holmberg and Bobby McMahon.
I think his most frequent line mates are Holmberg and Tavares.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And like, listen, John's had a good year.
Productive.
Like, yeah, he's had a productive, good year. But I'm with you. Spice something up, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
All right, Jonas. We'll see what comes of it tonight.
We will see. 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock game.
Tough.
Yeah, you can hear it right here on TSM Radio. These are tough. Monday night at 10 with the time change and everything. I'm all out of sorts, man. I got my kids at home for March break. We went snow tubing today. I'm exhausted. I have been exhausted all day. So tonight will be a grind, but we'll make it through. And a full breakdown tomorrow. Thanks to everyone from behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. Good seeing you, Jonas.
See you soon.
There's Jonas Siegel of The Athletic. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m. We'll chat then.